Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and or girls. This is fantasy football. Hush reality. This is it's championship week. Fantasy football Super Bowl. It is it's also Christmas Eve. And the fact that I'm doing this on Christmas Eve is kind of ridiculous, but also I can't procrastinate anymore. I would normally, like tomorrow, Friday is Christmas. So, any other week I would procrastinate till Saturday, and I would do this on Saturday. But Saturday, the games actually start tomorrow on Christmas, which you may have a player or two in the Saints game. And so it can't wait any longer. We have to talk about it because I made the finals again. I know I do pretty much every year in one of my two leagues. A couple years ago, I made it to the finals in both my leagues. Didn't win both. Won one, lost the other. And this year, I'm particularly proud of myself for making it because I expected to make it, but because my keeper was Derrick Henry, and I had won our consolation bracket, so I had first pick, and I took Christian McCaffrey. And so this whole time, I was expecting this engine to kind of push everything together, but luckily the rest of my drafting was good. I also have Stephon Diggs, which no one's really talking about, but he is the wide receiver one. It's him and DK Metcalf, but everybody talks about DK. Nobody talks about Stephon Diggs, but he's right up there with him, and he deserves some recognition. And I managed to pull off a great trade to bring in Deshaun Watson, which, if you remember at the beginning of the season, he wasn't playing that great, and then all of a sudden, I traded for him when he wasn't playing well. They fired Bill O'Brien. Even though they have been winning games, his numbers have been fantastic. So it's Christmas Eve, and it's the eve, it's championship eve as well. It goes so fast, and there's some things, let's go over some things that I learned, and things, if anything proved itself again, is that the season is won and lost on draft day. And I know that because the team that sucked, and I've complained about it several times on this podcast my computer glitched and it auto-drafted rounds 4 and 5 and gave me players I would never have drafted there, had zero interest in drafting, and it wound up screwing up my entire strategy. So, and I was kind of backpedaling from that all season. But it taught me this: when you get somebody good and you have them, and you manage to get them off the waiver wire, give them some time. You have to give them time. I think one of my biggest mistakes was at one point I had Justin Jefferson on the bench. He was getting 0. I also had Henry Ruggs on the bench, who'd had like that one decent opening game, and then he was kind of banged up. But I really thought he was going to come back online. He did not. I dropped Justin Jefferson, and of course now he's blown up and become one of the best receivers in the league. So I missed out on that. Justin Herbert, another lesson I learned. Here's the other lesson. So one, be patient. When you have guys, especially with name talent, and I've said this before, don't drop name talent. I did it so many times this season because I would get angry with guys, so I would trade them, and it was a lot of bad trades. If I would have just kept Tom Brady, I'd probably be in the playoffs and maybe even be playing for the championship. But instead, I traded Tom Brady because I thought Tua was about to explode. And now Tua is finally, again, talk about patience, he is finally getting there, but out of the gate, he didn't start till week 8, and he didn't get good till like week 11 or 12. So I blew it there. That was a huge mistake. The guy that got Tom Brady, he's in the finals of my Comedians League. But I am in the finals of my League of Record, which is the one that, of course, I am the most committed to. They got me started in fantasy football, and I have the biggest rivalries there. Have forever. Love it. And in fact, I'm playing against probably my second biggest rival in there, the Paddington Bears. Team Nation being the biggest rival just because he runs his mouth like a motorbike. And then the other guy, he runs his mouth, but it bursts in all caps on our text thread. But I think it bothers me because I know he doesn't care nearly as much as I care. So, but one of us will become the first 3-time champion in that league. And so it means a lot, but at the same time, I can't let that pressure cause me to make a bunch of moves that are going to be a huge mistake. I got lucky last week with Tony Pollard, and I'm hoping we see something like that again in Giamatti Bernard. So let's look. So anyways, don't drop name players. I dropped Kenyon Drake. That was a mistake. Okay, you're going to think I'm stupid for this. I dropped James Robinson. But at the time, Kenyon Drake had just had a great game versus Dallas, and Lev Bell had just been traded to Kansas City, and CEH wasn't playing that great at that moment. So I felt like I got all, and there was only so much room on the bench, even with the extended bench of the IR. I had to you had to have double everything because of COVID. And now COVID is stinging me in the ass because I've been playing Hunter Henry. He's been my guy. Now, finals week, COVID out, and now I'm having to go with the guy I originally was playing, which I actually feel lucky to have kept him. I was like, I don't need him. It's the final week. And I was like, Hunter hasn't been, I was like, he's injury prone. Keep Jared Cook. I kept him. I'm playing him. So again, tomorrow, I'm playing both Will Lutz and Jared Cook. I almost played the defense, but Minnesota is one of those teams, they have so much talent, and New Orleans is one of those teams that sometimes they can play down to their competition. So I did pick up Houston versus Cincinnati, but my heart is really with Tampa Bay, but nobody believes in Tampa Bay versus Detroit. But Detroit is such a mess right now. Half their entire defensive coaching staff has been knocked out. So that bodes very well for the offense. So if the offense plays well, then, I mean, the offense of Detroit, they're going to have to try and throw the ball, which seems on paper great for Marvin Jones Jr., maybe it is, but you need time. That takes time. And that line will not be able to stop the rush of Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay, I think they're looking at a 6-sack day tomorrow. But then again, so might be Houston going up against Finley, for Christ's sake. And yeah, they had the big game, but this time, I mean, that was against Pittsburgh. It was a rivalry game. It was like we're living in the, inside-out world. It made no sense, that game. So we'll see right there. So don't drop them players. You got to be patient. You got to have patience with rookies. Oh, and also don't listen to what the coaches say. I had Herbert on the team that I needed to make. I had Herbert. Looked great. I believed it. I said it right here on this podcast. I said it multiple times. I was like, this guy, that's why I became an advocate of Keenan Allen. I was like, play Keenan Allen because Herbert can get him the ball. But then the coach, I've talked about this before, Anthony Lynn was like, listen, this is still Tyrod Taylor's team. Tyrod Taylor comes back. This is Tyrod Taylor. So I dropped him, and then 2 weeks later, he's like, you know what, we're going with Herbert. Oh, my God. The other thing is, some guys are addicted to trades. I have a buddy of mine named Jonathan Gregory who is addicted to trades. He loves trade. That's him. Because I've gotten burned on trades, now the next year, it's going to be hard to get me to make a trade. But I've been addicted to the waiver wire. But I'm addicted to the waiver wire. That's the thing. I'm always looking for the next thing. I'm like, ooh, this guy's coming out. I want to get him early. And then if he doesn't immediately produce, I drop him. And that's a big mistake. I found that I tend to be right about these things, but about 2 weeks early. So those are the lessons I've had to learn this particular season. Yeah, never believe what the coaches say. So now let's talk about, obviously, one of the things that got me into the playoffs. Although most of my choices I still would have won last week, but Tony Pollard put me way out in front last week with a 32-point performance out of nowhere. And this week now you have Giamatti Bernard coming off talk about a get-right game. He had a get-right game up against Pittsburgh, turned into a monster performance. Do I expect 2 touchdowns? No, but the opportunity is there. So I have Gio Bernard, and I'll tell you who else. I mean, just the other guys I've got as potentials to play in that flex spot. It could be Gio Bernard. It could be Tony Pollard, which if they scratch, Ezekiel Elliott, I would probably be inclined to put in Tony Pollard, even though he's up against a tougher defense. I just like him better as a runner. I trust him more than Gio Bernard. I also have Emmanuel Sanders, who's now the wide receiver 1 in New Orleans. I have Antonio Brown, who had finally the connections there. Been waiting all this time for that connection to come alive. Finally came alive last week, and I think we're going to see more of that against Detroit. CeeDee Lamb, who, despite not having a great matchup last week, wound up putting up, I think, 12 or 18 points, something like that. Had a great day. And Kalen Ballage, which, again, he's just there in the event they're like, Eckler's a scratch. But right now, that guy, for me, is Gio. So looking at these various options, here's what I do. Because for me, it comes down to a couple things. Number one is opportunity. Who's going to touch the ball the most? With wide receivers, I mean, it depends on coverage. It depends on game script, which so does running, absolutely. But really, it's very game script dependent. Chemistry It's also, is the chemistry there with the quarterback? When he rolls out, is that the guy he's looking for? So there's a lot of factors. With running back, you know he's going to touch the ball, but is he a featured back? Is he splitting 50-50? Is he on part of a 3-man committee? So these are the things that factor in. So for me, I've divided the system. It's the ratings are a scale of 1 through 5. And you're looking for players that basically give you the closest to a 10, perfect 10 score. And then that's the guy. If you want to take the emotion out of it and weighing this and that, this allows you to weigh it in a simple mathematical way and say, I think this guy is the guy. So it's opportunity on a scale of 1 to 5. How many times are they going to touch the ball? And then E for explosion. What are the chances this person is going to explode? That's based on talent, game script, the defense they're facing, things like, and momentum. Do they have something to prove, like a Tony Pollard? And so it's a 1 to 5 in each scale. Combine those, get your total score, and there you got it. So let's look at Tony Pollard. He's versus Philly, which has given up the 20th fewest points. So they're right there in the middle of the pack. Opportunity right now is reduced to a 2.5 because looks like Zeke Elliott's going to play. So that splits him to a 50-50. And then explosiveness, a 3.5. I mean, yes, he has explosiveness, but if you don't have the opportunities, it's going to be hard to get off against a relatively good defense. So that equals a 6. 6 is a total rating. Mike Davis. Look at Mike Davis versus Washington. Very good defense. Opportunity, 5. Total 5. They treat him like a featured back there and have since Christian McCaffrey's been gone. Sure, sometimes they do the trick plays with Curtis Samuel or whatever, but really he's the guy. So that's a 5 on the opportunity. Explosiveness, though, you got to give him a 2, only because he has struggled against really great defensive lines, which Washington is definitely one of. So he does get a total score of 7. Emmanuel Sanders, playing on a Friday, which for me, that's like playing on a Thursday. It's very tricky, very iffy, but it is in the national spotlight. Versus Minnesota, which has given up the 5th most fantasy points to receiver. So his opportunity is a 3, and that's because there's no Thomas. But it's not better. So you would think wide receiver 1 on the Saints, that's better than a 3. It's got to be like a 4, 4.5. But you saw last week that Breeze is spreading it around, and he doesn't throw very deep, which affects his explosiveness rating, which is just a 3.5, because he was in this position last week and only had 5 targets. I mean, he did manage to catch a 55-yarder, but without that, he doesn't wind up with 10 points. His total score is 6.5. Antonio Brown versus Detroit. This is a guy I was talking about. Great opportunity. Well, potentially great. For me, the opportunity is a 2 because of all the mouths to feed. They still have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Gronk, and Cameron Brate people are talking about. So his opportunity there is a 2, in the running game. But his explosiveness is a 4.5 because we saw last week the chemistry's there. He's looking for him. He had 5 out of 7 targets. I mean, the opportunity's there on the explosive side. So that gives him a total score of only 6.5. CeeDee Lamb versus Philly, right in the middle of the pack, giving up the 13th fewest. His opportunity, I'm giving him a 2, because there's still going to be Amari Cooper. And Michael Gallup has been getting looks lately, too. So his opportunity is more like a 2. And his explosiveness, though, is a 4. When he gets the ball, he's definitely explosive. So that gives him a total score of a 6. You might even put the opportunity at a 2.5, but bump him up to a 6.5. So he's right there tied with Emmanuel Sanders. But still, you're looking better with Pollard. Which is better than Pollard. Or tied with Mike Davis, but still not as good as Mike Davis. Now let's look at 2 guys that were picked up a lot on the waiver wire this week, particularly Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell versus Atlanta. Atlanta surprisingly good against the run, giving up the 27th fewest. That makes him what, 5th? 5th best against the run. So the opportunity, because he is going to be I'm going to say 3.5, because remember, they're going to still probably bring in Darrell Williams, or they brought someone up from the practice squad that looked pretty good. So opportunity brought a 3.5, and explosiveness a 2.5. If you watched him run, he's not that back that's explosive. You have to build the blocking system for his style. He's not really a great plug-and-play guy, although he looked a little better last week. So overall, 3.5, 2.5, he gets a 6. So that's not tremendous. Giamatti Bernard, on the other hand, now he is going up against Houston, which is like giving up the number one most points to the running back. His opportunity is a 5 because he's definitely run as a feature back, and his explosiveness is a 3. I mean, he's definitely got some momentum going out of last week, but if you look at the numbers, he's been really bad up until last week, so that brings him down a little bit. But still, at 3 explosive and 5 opportunity, you're looking at a total score of 8. So that's a guy you're going to want to play. Another guy you're going to want to play, Melvin Gordon versus the Chargers, 14th. Opportunity, 3.5. Philip Lindsay's still there, but he's not pulling down a full half, and he's banged up. And his explosiveness level is a 5. That's an 8.5. You got to play him. Marvin Jones Jr. I mean, his opportunity is a 4.5. He had 12 targets last week. And his explosiveness is also 4.5 because they're going to have to throw the ball deep versus the Bucs, which is probably going to shut down the run. They're great against the run. So that gives him a 9. You have to play Marvin Jones Jr. Corey Davis versus Green Bay. They're the 5th worst against the pass. Fifth best against the pass, rather. 27th most least fantasy points. So opportunity, he's got a 3, because they're going to rely on the running game. It's the Titans, and then A.J. Brown is number 1. So he's a 3 on opportunity, but his explosiveness is a 5. That makes him an 8. He's a pretty solid play. Jeff Wilson Jr. versus Arizona. Arizona giving up the 22nd fewest points, which means they're right in kind of the middle of the pack, better than average. Opportunity, I gave him a 3.5, though, because I know Mostert is gone, but Tevin Coleman is back. And with Arizona and that explosive offense, they're probably going to have to throw the ball. But his explosiveness, I give him a 5. So, I mean, he's still an 8.5. You still should play Jeff Wilson Jr. J.K. Dobbins versus the Giants. Giants give up the 10th fewest, which means they're very good against the run. Well, they're middle of the pack. Opportunity, though, is a 4 because he's kind of primarily become the running back, and his explosiveness is a 5. That makes him a 9. You have to play J.K. Dobbins versus the Giants. Leonard Fournette versus Detroit. Detroit's, I mean, they are the worst against the run. They're giving up number 1, so I think Houston is like number 4 or something like that, or 3. So Detroit, they're the worst. So his opportunity is a 4, but it's a pass. I would say 5 because he's going to be the main guy, but it's a pass-heavy offense, but his explosiveness is a 5. So that equals 9. Leonard Fournette is almost a must-start. J.D. McKissick versus Carolina. They've given up the 7th most points, so it's a great matchup. The opportunity then level, I mean, he's become the main guy there, plus he's catching passes. So that makes him a 5 opportunity, and explosiveness 5. He's a 10. You got to play J.D. McKissick. Jarvis Landry versus the Jets. Jets, I mean, you know what they are. Opportunity is a 4 because they're a run-heavy scheme. But when they pass, he's looking for Jarvis Landry, and his explosiveness is a 4. Even though he's been a little banged up, he's still right there. That makes him an 8. He's a solid start. Zeke Elliott versus Philly. They're 20th, 20th, give the 20th most. So they're okay against, they're middle of the pack against the run. Opportunity's a 3 because Pollard is if he doesn't look good, they're putting Pollard back in. And explosiveness, unfortunately, you've watched him. He's a 2.5. That gives you a 5.5 rating. So Zeke Elliott is not a start. Tony Pollard is actually a better start than Ezekiel Elliott for your championship week. So that's the formula. Opportunity and explosiveness. How would you rate them 1 to 5? Closest rating to 10. That's the guy you go with. That's what I'm saying. I'm actually playing that. That's why I'm going with Mike Davis, even though it's a tough matchup, versus Giamatti Bernard, because their numbers bear out on my little metric. And I'd rather go with that than just be like, you, because that's, I mean, at the end of the day, that's going to drive you crazy. Anyways, that's it. That's what I have to share with you. Merry Christmas, you guys. Go get those championship rings. Go Cowboys, who were miraculously somehow still, although I expect, of course, thank you for switching to Jalen Hurts right before you play the Cowboys. Maybe there'll be a Christmas miracle in my stocking. And I'll be honest, I'd rather I get the win than the Cowboys. I think it would be much better spent on me in championship week. You guys, Merry Christmas. Take care. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, which I guess is now Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. Merry Christmas, guys, and have a great championship week. I hope everybody wins, although not everybody can win. Let's go, Cowboys!